I'm very mindful of the intention of this conversation today specifically, and I'm very mindful of the power of this conversation specifically. So I have been pretty intensely devoted to this nominalization we call boundaries in the last some time because I'm very mindful of its power in inviting and allowing women to lead meaningful lives. So, in the midst of secrets and lies, which is at the root of all evil, as far as I'm concerned, right, lives a boundaryless existence. So, in between secrets and lies, the outcome of that is a boundaryless existence. So, I want to unpack the conditioning that leads to what we call nice girl conditioning, right? Like good girl conditioning. So every single one of us here probably knows what that is because we are good at our job. We're good parents. We're good mothers. We're good sisters. We're good sisters-in-law, right? Like we're good fill in the blanks, or at least we attempt to be. And so we know that there are expectations placed upon us that we internalize as real, and then we actually seek to live in the world. For so many of us, myself included, I didn't know that in the conformity to that, so in my seeking to be nice, right, to play nice, in my seeking to be liked, to be included, what had to happen in order for me to play the role that I think needed to be there, which by the way, never fucking worked, is that I had to, inside myself, lie to myself and present as inauthentic outside of myself. Why? Because I'm not presenting as who I actually am. I'm presenting as who I think the other person wants me to be. So how many layers removed am I now from the truth of my own experience? How many layers removed am I now from the internal clarity that it takes to live a meaningful existence? So there's a lot of fill in the blanks in there about who I think I should be, who I think people want me to be, based on my own conditioning. So in this call today, I wanted to unpack a little bit about this notion called cultural conditioning around who we choose to show up as in the world. So give me a second here. I want to, for a lot of us, we're here because we're seeking clarity. So we're seeking to live a life that allows us to be clear inside ourselves about who we want to show up in the world and inside ourselves, preferably from the truth of our own experience. That statement is a loaded statement, the truth of my own experience. What does that mean, right? So many of us show up to these calls because we lack clarity around what that means. How do I know if X is the truth of my experience or if Y is the truth of my experience? So I know some of you have been messaging me today even, and there's this presenting and there's this presenting, and I don't know if it's this and I don't know if it's that, right? So the clarity that's required to actually make a choice is not available in that moment. So why does that happen, right? What is it that gets in the way between what's presenting in the moment and the clarity that's required for you to know what that is? So many of us, actually quite a few here, completed a recent version of decloaking, right? So whether it was the one in October or whether it was the one in November, every single one of us has been through that experience now at least once. And the reason it takes multiple passes at this thing is because the conditioning constantly comes up. So the stuff around, okay, I think I got this and I'm going to push the pause button, right? Like I'm just going to like live my life now from here actually happens. And then we get lost because stories start to take over. And the stories that start to take over are stories around conformity. So in order for me to be a good sister-in-law, I'm going to pick on that one. In order for me to be a good sister-in-law, what has to happen is that I have to conform to some external narrative that I think is who people want me to be. So now what has happened is I've lost touch with my own internal state, right? Because I'm no longer willing to hear what's real and true for me in this moment. The only thing I'm willing to hear is what will get me to the outcome that I think that I want. So if I think that I want a relationship with my sister-in-law, I will now do whatever it takes for my truth to try and map to that outcome. So that can be true for anything, right? Like that can be true for marriage, that can be true for work, that can be true for, your relationship to your mother, fill in the blank. It really doesn't matter. What matters is beginning to pay attention to the process that each of us goes through that allows us to keep the blinders on in order to conform to a reality to achieve a particular outcome. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah. So in my model of the world, that kind of living cloaked to my truth and seeking to comply to a particular outcome, a preconceived outcome, that model of the world causes and sustains internal and external chaos. And the reason that that happens is because I'm not willing to notice my own boundaries, right? To notice my own truth as the boundary of what shapes my choices, as opposed to my choices being shaped by a perceived outcome, right? So if I want to, and we're all conditioned to do this, right? We're conditioned to, particularly as firstborn daughters, but as women more generally, we're conditioned to be the caretakers of relationships. So if anything's going wrong at work, if anything's going wrong at home, if anything's going wrong with our children, with our partners, with anybody else out there, we feel responsible for having to take care of them. Right? We take that on and then we wear it as a nobility prize, right? It's like, I'm doing the honorable thing and I'm self-sacrificing for the greater good because it's my responsibility. So there are many places on the planet where that mindset will get you reward points and golden stars and, a nice pat on the back. There are many places in the world where that will happen. Here is not one of them. The reason we're here in this conversation through the well systems paradigm, through the ongoingness of this thing, right? Because it is a paradigm, it's a mindset, it's a way of life. The reason we engage in this is that we don't live like that any longer, right? We do that so that we can actually notice how else to live that allows us to take ownership of our internal states and live our life from that. Very different ways to live. So one is manipulating ourselves and people around us to achieve an outcome, and nobody likes to be manipulated. And the other is, you know what, here's the truth of the thing, like I'm clear about it and I don't know where it's going to lead, but I know for fucking sure that I'm not going that route. Right? So the clarity here is not about the outcome, the clarity is in the process. And so when I'm clear about the clarity in the process, I know that my internal boundary is an unwillingness to be inauthentic. So in those moments where clarity is lacking, right, and the frustration kicks in and we stay in the frustration because I don't know what to do, and what about this, and what about that, and what about this, and then the other thing, and what's people going to say, and look what he did, and look what she said, right? Those are distractions. Those are massive distractions from a higher order truth that you're not in this moment willing to own. How do we take and apply the predictable structure of thought so that when confusion arises, we become more intentional about seeking clarity? So I'm sure this will come up today at some point, right? But when this thing presents or that thing presents and both are muddled with uncertainties and chaos and all kinds of different stories, what's missing there is the pause. Right? What's missing there is that critical 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute, whatever it happens to be, pause. attention at the base of your spine and noticing your breathing. Am I breathing nice and deep? Is my belly relaxed? Are my shoulders relaxed? Is my mind on my body, or is my mind on solving the problem? Because that'll give you a lot of information about where you're choosing to live. And when you're choosing to live from seeking to solve a problem, where you're not at is your own internal self. Like you're not in your body. And if you're not in your body, like in the last Navigating Chaos, your connection to self, right, to signal from self, has been X'd out. Declan likes to do this. He loves this thing. He'll just go X, and then like, no, you're not allowed to. That thing doesn't exist anymore, right? But it's like that, right? We do that to our bodies, and therefore we do that to the signal from self. Because in the Huna model, the only way that you can hear truth and be boundaried inside yourself is when you are deeply focused in your body. Not outside of you, not seeking to solve a problem, not seeking to be who someone wants you to be and all that sort of stuff. Because what that leads to categorically is you feeling burnt out, pissed off, frustrated, exhausted, fearful, enraged, uncertain, bullied into compliance. I don't know, like what else? All those sorts of things, right? Just feeling like you don't belong because in that moment, you're disconnected from yourself. I'm getting very strangely black and white with signal from self messages. And it's like the clarity of the thing has become black and white for me. So if I'm conforming and I'm in chaos, right? The alternative to that is clarity. So I have to push the pause button somewhere between here and here. There's the pause button for me to notice where I'm standing. In between being nice and self-sacrificing and being noble and saving people from themselves and all that sort of stuff lives authenticity. What is the truth of my experience in this moment? My truth, my experience, my moment. So if I'm trapped in confusion, right? If I'm trapped in this mindset of I don't know what to do and all this sort of stuff, if I'm trapped in a mindset of confusion, on the other side of that is truth. And the truth is very black and white. The truth is always consistently yes or no. And then we muddle that with, I think so, yes, but maybe not. So now you're in the intellect seeking to figure it out. I think maybe, but probably not. I think probably not, but maybe yes. You see, so we confuse ourselves by not honoring ourselves sufficiently to pause and to actually make a different choice, which is to check in with our body, to check in with the moment that we're in the clarity of the yes or no, in the clarity of stay or go, left or right. So I know that sounds sometimes, oh, well, you're not taking the complexities of the thing into consideration. But here's the thing. Yes, you are. Right? And you take the complexities of the thing into consideration when you honor your truth. Because now you're not choosing to live muddled, but instead you're choosing to take ownership of that singular truth. And from that singular truth, engage. So this is not an easy process, and it is a process about becoming. So it is an exploration of identity. So it's very much choice point up, right? Because it's an exploration of identity. And when you start to mess around with your emerging authentic self, with your emerging identity, everything below, fourth and down, right? Everything will start to shift. And it will start to cause profound chaos out here, right? But inside of you, you will be clear. And so you will know how to navigate the chaos because you're clear in what matters to you. You see? So it doesn't matter that somebody has an opinion. It doesn't matter that somebody posts nasty things on Instagram about you. It doesn't matter that, somebody's lying about you over there. It doesn't matter that somebody has things to say over here, right? It doesn't matter because you know where you stand. So the higher up logical levels you go, the more you expand your context for how you perceive the thing, the more you evolve into yourself, right? Into your emerging authentic self. And that is an ongoing process. But if you're focused on who said what and who did what, and they're wrong and you're right, you're fucked. Because you're trapped fourth down, seeking something from someone that they either cannot give you or are unwilling to give you. So for a lot of us, we do this because we want our mother's approval. We want our mother's attention. We want our mother's life to be better. And we're not noticing that in seeking that from another person who either can't or won't, or whatever it happens to be, we're depleting our own selves. So I encourage you all, particularly as the holiday season is, upon us, to really come back to yourself, to really come back to your body, to trust that your body can handle whatever it is that's showing up, and that you can ask yourself higher order questions to ensure the waves of information move, and in the movement, that is where you get your life back. Not to try to shut that down because it's scary, right? Not to try and keep that nice and neatly contained because somebody might be looking, right? But to actually surrender to it. And you'll notice that there's consequences, right? So there's consequences to living as a, good little girl for the rest of your life. You're not, right? There's consequences to that way of living, and that is self-betrayal. So you are the lucky ones because you're at a choice point. You're at a perpetual choice point. So it doesn't matter that 2 seconds ago you did X, you can now choose Y, right? You know that. So living as a good girl, whatever that means to you, and I encourage you all to unpack that for yourself, begin to notice how that keeps you hostage to an internal state of powerlessness. Because the only way that you can actually live that way is if you continuously comply with someone else's version of the story, who they think you should be. And how much fun is that? Because of course the marker's always moving. So it doesn't matter how often you comply, the marker's constantly moving. Final thought. One of the consequences that you can internalize for yourself as real, right, is to notice that your pain is your gateway to your evolution. Your moment of pain, whatever you want to call that thing, pain at all logical levels, that moment is your invitation to a more authentic you. That moment is your fuel, if you will, to the next layer, to transform the layer that is, and to emerge into the new layer of your capital S self, perpetually emerging, right? Perpetually unfolding. So I encourage you to trust the process, to learn, to find a way, right? Find a way to love the process, to find a way to notice your own patterns, because you will have patterns within this process. And if you want me to share mine, I'm happy to. Right? But they're spiral and kind of almost cyclical in nature, but I can now know where I am in the cycle of my evolution. And I know in those moments where it's oh, and I'm like this close, man, to whatever next layer is here for me. But I have to claim it. I have to choose it. I have to stay with the and it is constant, right? This is not a love and light scenario. This is a boundary to commit to a process that you know works. Because what's the alternative? So I'm here to help women who are seeking to no longer live in self-destructive tendencies find a way to do that. Right? That is my purpose in these conversations, in these explorations, in my life, living my life, in addition to, of course, myself, right? My self-evolution. But I'm very mindful of that process, and it means I have to stay engaged in that process for myself and then engage with each of you. So you cannot give what you haven't got. If you're seeking to change someone else's life from a place of depletion, it's not going to happen. If you're seeking to have them understand so they give you permission, it's not going to happen. If you're seeking for them to keep thinking, oh, she's so nice, it's not going to happen. So how willing are you to be perceived as not nice? How willing are you to value authenticity over how you're perceived by someone else? And be honest, right? Like there's no right or wrong. Be honest, because the truth of that moment is what will set you free to the next layer. But if you deny yourself the truth of the moment, even if it is, yeah, I want to be perceived as nice. Yeah, I want everybody to like me. And I don't care what you think, Stella. Right? Own it. So those are my thoughts that came to my awareness before this call. And I wanted to share with you. This is an ongoing conversation, right? This is a conversation that I've been in for myself for probably at least 2 years. Ever since I noticed that I don't exactly fit into my family system. And so I tried every which possible way to contort myself into that, and every which possible way led to outsider, right? So I either claim and own what's mine to claim and own, and find a way to be in the presence of people who perceive me as an outsider, knowing what I am as God force, or I wither and I succumb and I capitulate and I become small and model to my son what a shitty life looks like. So I know I have a choice, and my choice is to notice the places and spaces where I be inauthentic, and even if it's out of my awareness, to stay curious about how come this is causing so much pain. Right? What is it here that's there for me, for my evolution? That's why I created 2 unapologetically unfuckwithable experiences, right? Because I was very mindful of reclaiming the power of the crone. And now that's shifted. That's shifted because boundaries have become so critical in the whole exploration, and transcending that internal state of chaos has become so important. So that's what the next year long is focusing on, right? Because I adapt my work around my life and what I'm seeking to create and what's meaningful for me for my evolution. So how do you choose to live? And how much of what's meaningful to you do you bring to your awareness? Do you bring to your life? Do you bring to your partner? Do you bring to your work? And how much do you hide? Okay, final thought. December 17th to the 21st on winter solstice, I will be having what I called a boundary boot camp. The idea is that we connect over Telegram. I'll send a short email and connect over Telegram. 2 to 5 minutes. I'll send, a voice clip for you to consider throughout your day and to implement it throughout your day, and then to notice what comes up. And on the 5th day, we will gather for 90 minutes and just have an exploration around what we discovered. So the Telegram group is open, just like in the year-long exploration. So you share, right? Like it's not just like me talking to you. I don't do that. If you're curious about that, I think there'll be an email tomorrow, day after, something like that, to let you know that it exists and what it is. And if you want to join me and the other women who have signed up, I'd love to see you there. So that's it. That's all, especially right before the holiday season. Oh, almost like it was intentional. Okay. I think that's it for me. I'm just going to pass it over to you. What's going on in your life? What's meaningful for you to share? What do you want to explore?